The taking of hostages is a crime. In international law, in the law of the United States, in the law of Israel, unfortunately, there is no law in Gaza. And so we are gathered here with families who have sustained a criminal act, taking people hostage, holding them hostage for ransom or for protection. These families have shown tremendous courage during this deeply traumatic time, as those who are being held captive have shown. These families of hostages are in great pain because they do not know and are not notified as any humane captive should have knowledge that their relative still lives. We must exorcise this cancer on the body politic that is called Hamas. The governor of my state, newly elected, is named Moore. He served in the 82nd Airborne Division and served in Afghanistan and Iraq. And as he ran for governor, his mantra was this: leave no one behind. And the Congress of the United States is committed. Republicans, Democrats across the board, in leaving no hostage behind. These families remind us of the profound solidarity between America and Israel. We are two nations, but we stand as one. It's my privilege to introduce a member of a family who is a 19-year-old young man who served in the IDF, who happened to be close to the border that was transgressed by these terrorists, these cancer on the body politic, and we believe taken hostage. It says here, it is my privilege to introduce. That's not true. It is my sad duty to introduce a member of a family with whom we share the agony of the unknown. 19-year-old Aitay Khan was taken captive by an organization that believes that doing so is justified by their means, and their means are to kill Jews. I am in awe of the fortitude that his parents, siblings, and loved ones have shown during this crisis. I want you to know we share your grief and the grief of all the family members who are assembled here and will be introduced by members of Congress. We pray for the day that Aitay will be returned home safely, and we'll do everything we can to make that a reality. Today, tomorrow, and every day thereafter, until those hostages are returned whole, well, and alive. I've just met Ruby, so I can't give you a long recitation of him, but he comes from Flatbush, and that's one tough group of people. He now lives in Tel Aviv, another tough group of people. I mentioned a song that you sing sometimes when you're for a candidate or for a cause. And that song is "Like a Tree Standing by the River, we will not give in. We will not retreat. We will not forget. And we will recover and welcome back the hostages of Hamas." Ladies and gentlemen, a brave soul, Rudy Chen.
Congressman, you could just, sure, 1 second. So before starting, we created, with the help of Brothers in All, which is a Israeli nonprofit organization, dog tags to remember every day, every second, who our kids are and that they're missing. The dog tag says, "Bring them back now." Congressman, if I can?
Sure.
Would be glad if you could also wear this with you in Congress, your next meeting afterwards, and tomorrow, and continuing to think about us. And the main objective, bring them back home now.
Amen.
Thank you, Congressman. So I'd like to talk to you about my son, 19-year-old Itai Chen. Maybe I'll start by talking about a concept that I think everyone here understands, a concept called family. Okay? We now have become family. We live in this bizarre universe of not knowing if our loved one is alive, dead, being taken care of, what did he eat, where did he sleep. A week and a half ago, Itai's youngest brother, alone, so Itai has two brothers, an older one and a younger one. The younger one, alone, celebrated his bar mitzvah. If you know what bar mitzvah is, it's the Jewish ceremony where a young man becomes a man. Our intention was to celebrate our small event with our intimate family members. As I'm sure all of you, if you have a birthday, anniversary, you want it to be with your family members. That's what we wanted as well. Think about that for a second. We have one agenda only by coming here. We represent about 220 hostages from 35 different nationalities. We demand not only the U.S., but all of the international community put at its highest agenda, number one agenda, bringing the hostages back home now. Itai is a very active kid. He plays a lot of basketball. He contributes a lot to the community. I like to hope that, like myself as a New Yorker, he has a tough New York DNA. I hope that when he was at that moment, he knew how to survive, and somehow, somewhere, he's alive, and we'll get him back soon. That's the only thing we think about, the only thing we ask. The senators that we've been meeting, congressmen, are the policymakers. Bring them home, now. Thank you.
On behalf of Congressman Gregory Meeks, I wanted to next call up Jeffrey Yehuda Benin, who's the father of Liat Benin. She and her husband from kibbutz near Oz managed to contact the family before they were kidnapped, and they have not been heard from since.
Thank you. Thank you for all being here today. I would like to add or add dimension to the specific circumstances of my daughter and son-in-law's apparent abduction. It needs to be understood clearly that the morning of these events, 150 armed commandos entered the kibbutz and were working from house to house. In several instances, we're executing babies, we're beheading babies, we're killing people in their beds, and burning down houses and burning people alive in their safe rooms. Specifically for my grandson, who was holed up in his quarters, he managed to stay alive by hiding in the safe room, only by his ability to hold the handle of the door closed. And what was between him and a most certain death was 2 inches of a door. Fortunately, the terrorists gave up at some point, ransacked his room, set the room on fire, and left, leaving him behind. Further during the day, the Hamas terrorists got to my daughter's house and abducted her and set the house on fire. They killed the dog. My son-in-law is part of the first response team. It seems apparent that very early on he was abducted into Gaza. No trace of him had been found. There were no traces of blood in the house. So the assumption is that he's been abducted to Gaza. In addition, after the initial attack and carnage that was done on Kibbutz Nir Oz, dozens of civilians from Gaza streamed into the kibbutz and were looting every house, everything possible that wasn't tied down to the ground. They drove off with tractors. They just some kind of surreal circus going on there, as seen in the Hamas film clips that they published. My son-in-law was the manager of the agricultural garage. He was responsible for maintaining large agricultural equipment. And then, to make a long story short, he was a simple farmer doing his job. There's nothing extraordinary here. Although he was an accomplished artist. He was a very intelligent and bright young man. Enjoyed the work that he does in making the desert bloom in that area of the world. In addition to that, the terrorists who came to Nir Oz burned down the kibbutz factory. They have an internationally known paint factory, and there's nothing that remains of that kibbutz. The conclusion of all of these different things sees us with a community that has lost over 25% of the members of the community who have been killed, abducted, or otherwise missing. Following the events that happened in Nir Oz, the community was evacuated by the next day. The following day, the community was evacuated by the army to a hotel in the southern port city of Eilat, where they begin a long, hard process of repair, of dealing with the trauma, and of figuring out what to do with their futures, because it is entirely not clear, given what remains with the physical community of Kibbutz Nir Oz. I would like to say that the response of the American Embassy staff, to the plight of our loved ones has been exemplary, and this needs to be mentioned for everyone to see, in particular compared with the early response of the Israeli authorities. We have spoken. First of all, cases were passed on to the FBI. I think, as Ruby mentioned, these are actual criminal acts. So the FBI has been called in to investigate each instance of a Hamas attack on an American citizen. The FBI is involved. People from the State Department are involved in terms of hostage affairs. The entire handling of these incidents has been exemplary. I feel that it's upon us to make sure that there is continued pressure on members of Congress and the Senate to keep this topic front and center, and to try to come to a resolution of this situation as quickly as possible. I think I would be remiss if I failed to mention that the Hamas attack on Israel on August 7th was also an attack on the United States with deep ramifications. And I would like to emphasize, in our conversation with President Biden, in our Zoom conversation with families of the abducted, that he laid out First of all, he understands the gravity of the situation. He expressed deep sympathy for all of us and our families, and he laid out the basis for a plan of action that I believe makes sense, is worthy of support from wall to wall. Total bipartisan support for the president's plan of action to deal with this. The Hamas has to end. They are in no way any part of any solution of any kind in the Middle East. Thank you.
On October 7th, people living innocently and peacefully in the Jewish state were brutally attacked by a terrorist organization. Neighborhoods were pillaged. A peace festival bore witness to 200 lives lost. And alongside these innocent lives that perish, hostages were taken in the most brutal, inhumane way possible. No one was spared. Children, the elderly, women, men, people waking up on a holiday. We join you loudly from the chambers of this Congress in the United States of America to say, bring them home now. Bring them home now and resolutely. And we will not stop pushing alongside you for the return of these innocent human beings. Many Israeli, some American, many nationalities represented. As the co-chair of the hostage task force, I know how difficult this journey is for you to make. And I am so sorry you have to trek through these halls of this Capitol. But please know, to every one of the families, that we uplift you in a bipartisan way, and we uplift your loved one. Terrorism must be accounted for. Hamas must be held accountable. Hamas must go. I would like to introduce now someone who's touched my life very personally, Noam Perry, the daughter of Haim Perry, one of the more than 80 hostages taken from kibbutz Nir Oz. Thank you for sharing your father's story, and I would like to, on a personal note, extend that in a couple of months, my own father, who's an educator, will turn 79 years old. So we will keep standing alongside you to fight for the release of your father. Thank you. We love you.
Hello, I'm Noam Perry. I'm the daughter of Haim Perry, who's abducted in Gaza. On October 7th, Saturday morning, 11:23 minutes in the morning, I got a text message from my mother saying, "Dad has been kidnapped by terrorists. I'm alone in the safe room. Can't talk." I never imagined in my life getting this message, and I'm sure you can't either. In the following hours after this message, the horrors that this peaceful community of Nir Oz and others near the Gaza Strip has been through got clearer and clearer. We now know dozens of terrorists has invaded Nir Oz and for hours went house by house, butchering families, my friends, people I grew up with, their parents, burning houses, burning families alive. There are no words to emphasize these horrors. We've made this long trip to be able to tell you these stories because we know the numbers are staggering and no one can think of 220 people in captivity. But we know from Nir Oz alone there are 16 children in Hamas captivity, some of them toddlers and even a nursing baby. We also know there are 25 elderly, like my father, who's 79. There are 25 elderly above the age of 75. No one of these people should held even a moment more. I've been here for the past 3 days, meeting members of the Congress and Senate, and we feel the overwhelming support and understanding and the willingness to take leadership on this humanitarian crisis and getting all hostages back. And I urge you, the people of the United States, to stand by your congressmen and senators and send them your support. The United States is the only one who can lead this international effort to make our loved ones come back safely. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I'm French Hill. I represent Little Rock, Arkansas in the House, and I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to express our outrage about what's happened in Israel by the brutal puppet of Iran, Hamas, and their invasion of Israel. And I also am so proud to serve with Haley Stevens and be her co-chair on our hostage task force, where we try to provide our congressional offices the information they need to serve these families that have been taken hostage and to make sure that the State Department meets their standards through the Special Envoy's office of giving them the information they need to be effective in getting their loved ones home. An American citizen from Long Island, New York, Omar Nutra, just 22 years old, is being held hostage in Gaza. And everyone in this House, on both sides of the aisle, want him home. I'm so grateful to Greg Meeks, our ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Mike McCall, our dynamic chairman of that committee, for bringing us all together on the House floor and speak with one voice yesterday about America's outrage over what's happened in Israel to our ally, our friend. We were the first country to recognize the government and country of Israel. So we are all together on this. And I'd love very much for Omar's dad, Ronan, to come up and tell you his story and the impact this is having on their family, and again, illustrating the horrific impact of Hamas.
Just 4 families. We just represent 220. Large community, our new family that just became one on October 7. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our son. My wife and I, Orna, our younger son, Daniel, we are dual citizens of the United States. We live in New York. Our boys were born in New York. Our son, Omer, is actually a 9/11 baby. He was born shortly after 9/11. Actually, my wife was pregnant, 9 months pregnant, as she was crossing the bridge on foot, and I picked her up. Omer grew up within the Jewish community on Long Island. He graduated Schechter School of Long Island, a great leader of his peers, a huge sports fan. NBA and NFL are in his blood. Plays a lot of different sports and became the captain of both his volleyball, soccer, and basketball teams. He started to be active also in a youth group and shortly became the regional president of UGA in the New York area. When he finished school, he was accepted to Binghamton University in upstate New York, but really wanted to connect to his roots and decided to take a gap year, deferred his studies, and went in and worked with his peers in a program in Israel to learn the different conflicts, try to reach understanding, support, and volunteer in different groups. Worked with disability kids. And over there, he met his peers, his Israeli peers, where for them, going to the army is not an option. Everybody in Israel goes to the army. I myself, I was in the Air Force. My wife was also in the army. And then he came home very conflicted and said, you know, I can go to college or I can go to do whatever other Israeli is doing in Israel and is joining the IDF. And I said, you know, Omer, it's your choice. And he decided that he can't stand by. Our families are coming with Holocaust backgrounds, survivors of the Holocaust in Europe. They were the founders of Israel and decided to come to Israel, build it. And he felt that it's his time to be there and give his share. So he became a lone soldier, drafted, became a tank commander. Pretty quickly they identify his leadership. And last time we talked to him was Friday night when he told us that they were working really hard. The previous few weeks he was looking for a quiet time and a quiet, peaceful weekend. And as we know, that wasn't the case. A few days later, we were notified by the Israeli consulate. One of the worst things you can think about is that he's been captured and held hostage by Hamas. We know, Omer, that you are there and you're strong. If you see this, Omer, know that you have United States behind you. You got all the administration behind you. Know that 220 people out there with you are not forgotten. There is a big, big support here and a big cry. And anybody in the free world should be working as hard as they can to release you. And we, the families, will not stop until everybody is back. We expect the administration to do everything in their power to release the American hostages, the Israeli hostages, the young, the old, the women, everybody. And we know that there is sincere intention to reach that point, but we need it now. There are sick people. There are wounded people. Time is running out. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those powerful stories. I think we have time for about 2 or potentially 3 questions. If anybody does have a question, feel free to raise your hand. If you don't mind stating your name and outlet.
I believe First of all, thank you for your question. I believe that President Biden's address to the family members of the hostages is a matter of public record, actually. There was really nothing new there that he hadn't said before. He just made it clear in much more certain terms. His end game is a two-state solution at some point. In the meantime, is clear to the president that Hamas is not a part of any solution that will lead to that end. So therefore, all the steps need to be taken in an appropriate manner that would eliminate Hamas from the forum or from the table altogether.
I just want to add to that. So I think, we have one objective only, bring the hostages back home. Okay? All the other stuff could wait for another day. Something very basic, lead costs. Doctors Without Borders are not allowed to get in. We don't even know if our loved one is alive or dead. You want to think about that for a second? Basic. Make it happen.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay. Anybody, any final words? All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for sharing these stories. We appreciate it.